Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Folks, this is Philip Lomboy. Welcome to the show. Today, we have an amazing conversation to share with you. If you are considering writing a book, whether it's your first book or fifth book or more, then you'll want to tune in to listen to this conversation. If you are curious about the publishing process, from editing to getting your word into a written form, to even choosing between self-publishing or the traditional publishing route, then our expert today can help you with that. Today we're speaking with Jennifer Harshman. She is the founder and owner of Harshman Services. She coaches and consults with subject matter experts, communicators, and other leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, and publishers so they can get helpful writing out into the world where it can do more good. She has been editing professionally since 1992. She's edited tens of thousands of pages and now serves as a writing and publishing expert for publishers and independent authors alike. Very excited to share our conversation with Jennifer Harshman. Let's jump into it right now. Jennifer, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Philip.
How did you get into this world of editing and helping people publish their books?
Well, when I was in school, my teachers noticed that I was really good with grammar, punctuation, spelling, all of those types of things. So a lot of them came to me for help, and that really drew my attention to the fact that this is a skill set that not everyone has. So I've just always done it. And it came about that a friend of mine was working for a museum and wanted to subcontract out the editing work of a 2-volume set to me. And they needed it put into British style because it was going to be published in London. And I said, I don't know how to do British style. I know American grammar and such. And she said, well, I know that you taught yourself how to catalog books in just a couple of days. And most people go to school for a master's degree for that. So if you can teach yourself to catalog books, you can teach yourself to edit in British style. Go. And so I did. And they loved my work and wondered why I was not editing full-time professionally. So that was kind of the big billboard that I had, that I really should be doing that a lot more than I had been.
So you weren't even, like, I don't know if there's a real formal training track or anything like this. I mean, I don't know if there are any degrees for editing or that type of thing. I mean, is that typically the way other people go about it, or?
Sometimes people will major in English and then they'll go to work for a newspaper or for a publishing house, and they'll do editing in-house for several years before they decide to go freelance. So the way that I went about it was a little different than normal.
Yeah, you just did it, right? So what was that experience like for you? I mean, the fact that you saw these people believed in you, right? And you just kind of went on their belief in you and just kind of like took that as kind of your fuel for a bit, or what was?
Well, I had done it a little bit all through college.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had the skills.
You had the skills, yeah.
But I did really take that as the sign. I had been looking for something that I could do at home with my kids to homeschool them. And I knew that I could not hold down a traditional job because of my health issues. So it was just the perfect thing.
So you did this for them. They were happy with the results.
They loved it.
Yeah. And so where did you go from there?
Then I started contacting friends, and I mentioned that I had done these books, and some other people said, hey, I've got a book. One gentleman said, my wife wrote a book and published it, and it's full of errors. So she knows she needs to pull it down off of Amazon and have it edited now. And so I did that one, and one thing just led to another.
Wow. That's interesting that she said that, because now, that particular instance, did she go through a traditional publisher for that, or did she? just try to kind of do it on her own, or?
She self-published on Amazon, and she started getting some negative reviews because she had not had it professionally edited. She had several of her, English teacher friends and things like that. Some people had gone through it, but it had not been professionally done.
Okay.
And so when she started getting negative reviews, she realized that she really did need to invest in editing.
Okay. Now, when you do your editing services, are they primarily for people that are self-publishing on their own, or do you do it like for corporations or other businesses, or what's the scope of your work typically?
All of the above.
Oh, okay.
I have done some stuff for several different types of businesses, whether it's, entrepreneurs that have sole proprietorship or whether it's a corporation. I've also done stuff for some publishers and some small presses. And then I have a wide variety of independent authors that are my clients too.
Okay. But like, you don't do just the editing itself. And I want to get into editing also, because sometimes, especially for people that have not written their own book and gone through that process or whatever, editing is almost like an afterthought to them. It can be, in any case.
It can be.
But, so I wanted to dive into that a little bit. But like, aside from the editing work that you do, I mean, you also help them across the board, right? So for somebody that is like, Amazon has made it very, very easy with CreateSpace and like their KDP platform. Self-publishing has grown 38%. And this is as of 2017. And that's huge. So that's something where people are getting more of an appreciation of the things that you do. But aside from the editing work, you also help them to create their books as well. So almost from like manuscript, or even before the manuscript idea, to I have something that is for sale now. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I help people anywhere along the path whenever they arrive. So sometimes people will meet me at the very beginning and they'll say, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book." Like 84% of Americans want to write a book, but a very small percentage actually follow through and do it. And then I will take them by the hand and walk them through the whole process. So we'll mind map and brainstorm and figure out what needs to go in their book, what might be set aside for another one later on, and then go through the writing process. And I shape that as it goes and then edit it and get it all ready for publication. We do the formatting and everything that they need.
Like design of the book cover and all that kind of stuff?
Yep, all of that.
Wow.
So sometimes people will meet me in the middle. So they've already started, they know what they want to write about, and they'll get stuck. So they might get all of their ideas out and then they realize that this is still incomplete. So, but I don't know where to go with it. So then they'll meet me and I'll help them finish fleshing that out, get the rest of it written, get it edited, get it published. And sometimes people have done very well on their own. They know all of the things they want in it. They've done well with the development and outlining and with the writing process, but then they know that they need to have it professionally edited. So then they'll come to me at that point. So I really do meet people anywhere along that road.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, though. It's before I had any experience with writing a book per se, my thoughts on editing were, did you dot all the I's, cross the T's? Did you put the quotations in or whatever? Very different, though, than what is really involved. Let's talk about that a little bit. So there's different levels, I'd say different levels, different types of editing that can be done. Now, you mentioned like kind of helping somebody from their idea in the development of it. So that's considered editing as well. Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, so I have a kind of a word picture that helps to describe the different types of editing. So imagine that you're in a commercial airliner and you're flying over the Midwestern United States. You can look down out the window and you can see different colored patches on the ground.
Okay.
You can tell that those things are fields, but you can't tell if it's a soybean field or a cornfield. So developmental editing is the very big picture items. So the things that you might see from 10,000 feet if you were looking at your book. So things like what topic, what belongs in it, what does not, which chapters go where, does everything that needs to be covered get covered, things like that. And then line editing is where we look at the languaging, and that's like being in a crop duster. So you're lower to the ground. You can tell it's absolutely a cornfield.
Okay.
But you can't get any details. Is it sweet corn? Is it field corn? How many rows? How many acres? those types of things you're not low enough to it yet. So in the line editing, we'll look at each sentence as a whole. We'll look at the languaging in it. We'll look at each sentence within its paragraph. We'll look at each paragraph within each section. So it is sort of in developmental editing, but it's on a much more micro scale.
Sure.
And then the copy editing is where you're walking on foot through that cornfield. If you wanted to, you could count each individual plant. You can get a much closer look, and that's where we look at each individual word. So is it spelled right? Is it used correctly? Is it punctuated? All of those, what most people think of editing is copy editing. And then proofreading is the very micro level where we look at, we're going to open an ear of corn and we're going to count every individual kernel. So we literally inspect every character in a book.
Why is that important?
It's important because if you only do one type, but you need more than one type, then you're going to be missing quite a bit. So some people might have the copy editing done and they might have the proofreading done, and it will look good as far as reading, an individual paragraph or an individual sentence. But if you look at the book as a whole, there might be some gaping holes.
Now, when you're talking about holes and things that might be missing, you're really coming from the point of view of a potential reader, though. Is that fair to say?
It is.
Okay.
So an editor is first and foremost a reader. Okay. So we are your first reader. And even though the author or the corporation might be the one who's paying the bill, our client is really the reader.
That's a great distinction. That's huge.
So that's who we serve. And we want to serve through the author. We want to serve the reader. But, and of course, the author benefits as well because their book is coherent and people can receive it well. But really and truly, the end user is the reader. Gotcha.
And you are taking on the voice, the point of view of the reader, so that, the author could be a genius, right? In their particular field. But in terms of conveying those ideas so that the reader gets it, that's a completely different ballgame.
Right. Often authors suffer from what we call curse of knowledge, where they know their field so well that they forget what they did not know as a beginner.
It's the unconscious competence kind of stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we will try as an editor to put ourselves in the shoes of the person who is a beginner. And sometimes we ask a lot of questions of the author, and we might ask for clarification. We might ask for simplification. So I will make a lot of comments saying the typical reader will ask this. This may come to mind at this point in this book. If you want to address this would be a good spot. And then I'll make a notation. Now,
this is one of the things in terms of editing that I've heard as well, but whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or anything, these are highly personal projects. It's particularly if you're passionate about the subject, you spent years, maybe decades, researching it, living it. Say, for example, even if it's like it's a memoir or an autobiography, right? These are important to you. But then, so that's you're able to put it in a manuscript, send it to an editor, and hear these stories of slash and burn, and you're hearing about people just feeling crushed as a result of it, right? It's hard not to take it personally. Is that something that you've run into at all? Or is that hey, that's just the way it goes, guys? Is that how you approach it?
That is not how I approach it at all. And in fact, that's a big part of why I got into editing, because some of my friends were authors and they would go the traditional publishing route, and then they would get their book back and just say, it's not even my book anymore.
Really?
It's been changed so much. And I would tell them as gently as I could that they were correct. It was not their book. They signed a contract. It belongs to that publisher. They just received some royalties. So if they want to keep it their book, then self-publishing is the route they'll want to go. That gives them, all of that control over what happens. And as an editor, I wanted to be sure that all of my clients would feel much better about the process. I saw people in tears. And that to me is just wrong. I take it very personally when somebody is, going through this process. It's difficult. And I take it personally when I see other people not treat them with empathy. Just be a human, just put yourself in their shoes. And that's what when I train my team, the number one principle is the golden rule. If you were to read this comment about your own work, would you feel respected? Would you feel that the person cares and is taking the time and giving you the attention and the support that you need? Or are you going to feel like they just slashed your baby? And I compare it to going through surgery. When you have your book edited, it is a difficult process, even in the best situation, because you have put so much of your heart and soul into this. It may have been months if you're a quick writer. It may have been years. And it's your baby, and you're handing this over to someone to shape it and to change it. And it's really hard, even for the toughest people. It's really hard to do. So I want authors to feel like we're walking them through it. We're holding their hand. We're making it less scary, and that we respect them and what they're trying to accomplish. We know how important it is. So every comment needs to be clear that that's our goal, is to help them and their readers, and to do it as gently as possible.
In that particular case, it was like a traditional publishing arrangement, right? Where it is fair to say that it has to go through these gatekeepers. These are the people that have access to bookstores and distribution and all of that. And you have to kind of put your book's fate in their hands, and they're going to shape it based on their goals, which is sales and distribution and all that. I mean, book sales, quite frankly, right?
Exactly.
But at the same time, you're sensitive to what you've created as well. So now with the self-publishing, there is a possibility of another route, right? You have a sympathetic ear. You can help shape their book into something that is going to be good for ultimately the reader. But you're not killing someone's dream at the same time, I guess. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So do you have like a particular project that you work on, or a client that you work with, where at the end, when you were done helping them with their book, so you've gone through editing the book, maybe you help them with the publishing part of it in terms of like the design, and okay, let's put it into like a paper form or even an ebook kind of thing, and you handed them their book. Is there a time that you can remember that it kind of stands out for you?
There are so many that do. So many that are, when you hold your book in your hand, there's nothing like it. There's no feeling like it. And most authors will take a picture when their books, they'll order a box of books from Amazon for an event that they're having, or, to distribute to their friends and family. And they want to take pictures because it is just such a touching moment. And they're so excited. So I don't even know how many authors have emailed or Facebook messaged me a photograph of them. They're like, my book's here, Jennifer. So they're just over the top, over the moon excited. Yeah. And it's like that for just about everybody.
For everybody, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a big deal. Now we talk. I mentioned just now as far as like, okay, well, especially these days, ebooks are very big, like the electronic versions of books versus print. I know when ebooks first started coming out, there was the doom and gloom of like, oh, print is going away, so you got to be prepared for that. But now the statistics are showing that there's like, they call it screen fatigue. Ebook sales, where they spiked before, they've gone down quite a bit. And print books are actually on the rise again, which is interesting. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that there's a place for both. But we did, hear that prediction, all of the, print is dead was one of the headlines that I saw, print is dead. And at the time I thought, no, I don't think so. I think that there will always be some people who love the physical feel of a book in their hands. Sometimes a physical book is more portable than their device. Of course, you can take it to the beach. You don't have to worry about sand getting in it, things like that. And again, you mentioned screen fatigue. So people are using computers and phones and Kindles where we're looking at screens almost all day. And especially if they're in certain industries, they're looking at a screen all day long as part of their job. And then if they want to read, their eyes are going to be exhausted. So the print tends to be easier on the eyes, and people are gravitating more toward that. So the pendulum did swing this way a little bit, and now I think it's going to kind of come to rest.
Now, one of the things we were talking about earlier before we started recording here was there was a difference between like people that you mentioned earlier, people are very heavily invested. It's like they've got their baby in hand and they want to write their book. They consider themselves writers, right? Versus other people, and I think you mentioned that you kind of work with these folks quite a bit. These are professionals. They want to have a book. They would just want to be considered an author. They wouldn't say, okay, I'm a writer or I'm a good writer or anything like that. Let's talk about that a little bit as far as like the distinction between the two. Like you work with people where these people want to use their book as a business card. Explain that to me a bit.
Okay. So some people do think of themselves as a writer or someone who needs that creating outlet.
They enjoy that.
They enjoy the process and the result. And then there are people who don't really think of themselves as writers, but they know that they need to have a book or they need to produce content for their blog on a regular basis. And they feel stuck or it's a really difficult process. And those are the people that I really love to help. So sometimes they'll come and say, this is the thing that I want to do. And this is where I want to go with it. And they know the purpose for their book. So they're not necessarily looking to hit all the bestseller lists. They're not necessarily looking to retire on their income from the sales of their book, but they're using it as a tool to open more doors. And some will use that to book speaking engagements. Some will use that to distribute to their foundations or, their church members or whatever it is that they want to get that message out that they have in their book. So it really depends on what purpose that they have behind it, which way they'll want to go with some of the aspects. But for the most part, it is just opening those doors and it provides opportunities that other things just don't. And we even have a phrase in our language, she wrote the book on that. She is the authority on that topic. So it does carry quite a bit of weight to be able to say that you wrote a book.
I mean, we see that in like authority, like author is the first part of that, the word, right? So it really does go hand in hand. Typically, you help those folks by kind of doing, right? We're talking like you're looking to roll out a kind of an easier way to help with this as well, right? Because we talked a little bit about the steps you go through as far as from conception to actually putting a book out, right? Right. I do that on a regular basis. Okay, great. But you're rolling out a program for that also, right? Okay. Yes. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me what that is.
Okay, so I have a 12-week program, which is start to finish. So that would be for people who have not written their book yet. They might know their topic. They know their field. Of course, they're experts in their field. So we would walk them through from the very beginning, planning it out, all the way through the writing process, through the editing process, and then getting it published. And then I have a shorter one that's a 6-week that's for people who have written at least the bulk of their manuscript, and then we walk them through the editing process and the publishing process.
So it's almost like, okay, there's like two pieces to it almost, where it's like if they need some help actually putting a manuscript together, like the first draft of their book, you can help them through that because you've been able to have all, but like it's in a more structured form that they can just kind of, okay, week 1, week 2, kind of go through that process.
Yes.
But then, whether they, have to go through that or they already have something in place, then there's still going to be specific steps they have to go through in order to get it out into the world. So their print version, their ebook, the design of it all, the cover and all that kind of stuff. There are like specific steps they have to go through. So you can help them with either one of those things.
Right.
Okay. And that's what this coaching program is, that you're describing now. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That's fine. When did you start doing this?
Well, I started editing in the early 90s,
Crazy.
But I started doing books around 2010.
So you've been around for a while. I mean, you've had kind of like your finger on the pulse of, publishing and self-publishing, traditional and, self-publishing now as well. Where do you think it's going? What are the things you've experienced up to this point? What are the trends that you're seeing? And, what is that spelling for people in the future, just from your point of view?
Well, about a decade ago, it was still a little iffy as to whether or not self-publishing was the way to go. There was kind of a stigma to it, and some people would look down upon self-published books, and they even called them vanity published, or that somebody went to a vanity press. And there was some reason for that, because usually people didn't have very professional work done. They usually didn't edit it, and sometimes their printers weren't the greatest quality.
Okay.
But Amazon has helped a lot with that. They provide good quality with their KDP program. So, and then of course, more people are realizing the value of editing. So the self-publishing is kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, anyone can be an author. And on the other hand, anyone can be an author. So, some of the stuff that you'll see put out is very good quality. Some of the stuff you see put out is very poor quality.
I see.
So, I do see people going more and more toward the self-publishing, mostly because they have the control. And another factor is speed. So if you, for example, want to have a book put out this year, and, you're going to several conferences, you're going on a speaking tour, things like that, then self-publishing is the only option, because going to a traditional publisher, if you do happen to get picked up, is going to take 18 months to 2 years. So that's their typical cycle. So if you want to do something that's just around the corner, then you definitely want to do self-publishing. Okay. So, and I just see more people doing that.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite books this year was by David Goggins. He was a former Navy SEAL, and he came out with his a book, Can't Hurt Me. And that was a huge success. And he chose to go self-publishing. Like, he got some help. But it was a major success. So he had the option of going with some traditional publishers, and in his audiobook, he talked about some of the behind the scenes of like, well, this was going to go to auction. Like, he was accepting bids from traditional publishers on his upcoming book. He was going to put it out. But then he made the decision of like, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself. Particularly in David Goggins' case, he had quite a following already, right? I think you'd be hard pressed to get the level of success in your first book like he did without having a significant following fan base prior to that. So, what have you seen, with that? What are your thoughts on that now?
Well, traditional publishers need to look out for their bottom line, just like any other business. And they need to go with the ones that are going to be marketable. And usually nowadays, if you do not already have a platform, and if you are not already significantly well known, they're not going to be interested unless it's something that has wide mass market appeal. So most of the people who are wanting to write a book really don't fit into that category at all. They have a particular heart issue that they want to deal with, or they have a particular passion, something that relates to a smaller audience. To me, it's not any less viable or any less important just because it's smaller. And to a traditional publisher, it is, because again, they have to look at their bottom line. So that's why self-publishing is so great, because it opens up the ability to publish to so many people, even though they might have a smaller platform or no platform, but a good message.
And that's interesting. It's a business. It's the bottom line. And it's like, not to kind of paint this in the way of like self-publishing are the good guys, traditional publishers are the bad guys. It's like everyone has their motivations for what they're doing, and unless you're profitable, you can't stay in business at all.
Right. It just doesn't make sense for them to go with the smaller platforms.
Right.
And self-publishing also doesn't preclude you from traditional publishing later on.
Oh.
There have been some books that were self-published that were later picked up by traditional publishers because they did well and they got on their radar. So it doesn't shut the door forever.
Jennifer Harshman, this was awesome. For the people that are listening to this that are, maybe they're embarking on their journey. They've decided, okay, I want to be an author, right? And they don't know where to start. What direction would you point them? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to give me a call. That's usually what I do. I actually, probably going to editingwithempathy.com would be a good start for them.
Okay.
They could reach me there. But definitely do some research and decide which route do you want to go. Do you want to go traditional publishing? Do you want to go self-publishing? So, and for most people, it just takes a couple of minutes to evaluate which way they want to go. And then I would say, know your purpose. What do you want to accomplish with this book? If you begin with that end in mind, then you can kind of work backward and see what steps you need to take to get there.
Fantastic. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.